So in problem 3.14, we're looking at a cross. I think we're looking at monohybrid cross here. Let's see. Mendel crossed peas having green seeds with peas having yellow seeds. The F1 generation produced only yellow seeds. Okay, perfect. So let's hope this one's easy. So let's see. Mendel here, what did you do? You messed with my pen, didn't you, Mendel? Okay, let's see. The P1 generation is going to be green crossed to yellow, produces all yellow. Okay, great. So nothing strange is happening here. We know that green is recessive to yellow. We're going to assume these are true breeding because they didn't tell us they weren't true breeding, and Mendel loved working with true breeding plants, so true breeding means homozygous. We know yellow is dominant to green from class, but we also know it because all the progeny are yellow, and the green phenotype disappeared in the F1 generation. So genotype of all these are going to be big G and little g because they inherit a little g from that parent and a big G from that parent. That's the only possible genotype. So in the F2, the progeny consisted of 6,022 plants with yellow seeds and 2,001 plants with green seeds. Okay, so cross these, the F1s together, we have 6,022 plants. Glad we don't have to count all these plants. 2002, sorry, with yellow seeds, and 2001 with green seeds. Okay, does that make sense? Well, let's take a look here. So if we cross the yellow plants to each other, the F1 yellows, so they can make pollen or eggs with either a big G or a little g, because that's the genotype, right? So one half of the pollen is going to be big G, the other half is going to be little g. And the same thing for the eggs here. And normally we draw the female gametes up here and the males here, but that doesn't matter so much. Okay, so same thing for the other gametes. Big G from the other parent, little g. Combine these together, big G, big G, big G, little g, big G, little g, two little g's. 3/4 of the plants are going to be yellow, or yellow seeds. I can draw the seed now. And they're all round. There's no round or wrinkled in this question. We're assuming they're round. And 1 green. So 3/4 yellow, 1/4 green. Okay, perfect. So that's what we expect, and I think that's kind of what we see here, right? So these are approximately it's approximately 8,000 total. 6,000 or 3/4 of those are yellow, and 1/4 are green. Perfect. I can draw a little. I like drawing the seeds. Okay. So I'm still reading the question here, but now we fully understand what's going on and the question's making sense. So the next part of the question, so of the F2 yellow-seeded plants, 519 were self-fertilized with the following results. So what they did was they took some of these plants here, some of these 6,022 yellow plants with yellow seeds. How many did they take? They took 519 of them at random, and they self-fertilized them, because you can do that with peas. And what they found was that 166 of those bred true for yellow, which means they're homozygous. They have 2 big Gs. So so that means they 166 plants only produced progeny with yellow seeds, and then 353 of them produced produced progeny where 3/4 of them produced yellow seeds and 1/4 of the progeny were green seeds, or green plants. Okay, so let me clarify that. So again, so the experimenters here took 519 plants from these 6,022 in the F2 generation, self-crossed them. 166 produced only 166 of these 519 produced only yellow-seeded offspring, and then 353 of them produced offspring in a 3/4 yellow to 1/4 green ratio. So what is that telling us? The question now is, and they call this the F3 generation here. So these are all F3 plants here. F3 here. So the question is to explain the results by diagramming the crosses. Okay, so we've already done, I guess, this part. Yeah, we already did this part. We already diagrammed the 3/4 to 1/4 F2 generation. So how are we getting, how come 519 of these, how come 166 of them, when they were crossed to themselves, each one of those plants only produced progeny with yellow seeds? Because they were homozygous for 2 big Gs. And that makes sense. So let's see what the ratio is here. And the same thing for these down here. So 353 of these 519 produced progeny in a 3-to-1 ratio. And the reason for that is, or what makes most sense, is that of these 353, all of them were of the big G, little g genotype. And we know what happens when you cross a big G, little g to a big G, little g. You end up with 3-to-1 ratio of yellow to green. So, and if this is true, and they took these 519 from the 6,022 at random, then we should see about how many? About 1/3 of these should be homozygous for big G, and 2/3 should be heterozygous. Why is that? So look up here. So of all the yellow plants in this original Punnett square for the F2 generation, there are 3 types of yellow plants, 3 genotypes possible for yellow plants. Well, 2 genotypes possible, but 3 ways to get those genotypes. So we have 2 big Gs, 1 out of 3, a big G and a little g for the other 1/3, and a big G and a little g again for the other 1/3. So 1 out of 3 ways to get 2 big Gs, and 2 out of 3 ways to get a big G and a little g. And if you look at these numbers here, 166 is approximately 1/3 of 519, and 353 is approximately 2/3 of 519. So everything makes sense. So the experimenters, of the 6,022 plants, they took 519 at random. 166 of those were homozygous, 2 big Gs. 353 of those were heterozygous, and they know that because they did the crosses, and all of these 166 gave only yellow progeny, and all of these 353 gave progeny in a 3-to-1 yellow to green ratio.